Hi there, my name is Cajetan Berger. For those of you who are wondering, my name is the Austrian-German version of Gaetano. I am named for my grandfather, who is named after Saint Cajetan. I currently teach biology and life science at Wheatland Middle School. I am pursuing STEM endorsement because I recognize that in order to be an effective teacher, I must be well acquainted with society's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics goals so that my students can be better guided in pursuing careers in STEM. Additionally, the need for a scientifically literate community is ever pressing. To the fact that we have people denying climate change and claiming that the Earth is flat in this day and age is absolutely unabashedly unacceptable to me. And to better our future, we need to educate our students, educate our children in these fields so that they're prepared to make knowledgeable choices regarding these topics. When I'm not teaching, I like to play the banjo and the guitar. I just picked up these instruments about a year ago, and I've started reteaching myself a lot of what I learned in my high school guitar classes. I also really like the outdoors. I'm a really outdoorsy person. I participate in outdoor activities year-round. My major outdoor hobbies include, but aren't limited to, hiking, skiing, swimming, climbing, gardening, survival-style camping, and orienteering. And when I say survival-style camping, I mean, I build my own shelters. I make my own fire. I don't use cheater logs or cheater fuel, what they call lighter fluid. And I also very rarely use a tent. I also enjoy cartoons, anime, fantasy and sci-fi novels, and video games. I've wanted to be a teacher since I was in high school. And I know I knew it then. Because it was one of my goals as a high school senior to go to school to be a teacher. But during my freshman year of college, I decided to pursue other dreams. I had aspirations of being a journalist, and after graduation, although I had some success as a freelance journalist, I found myself working mostly with children. I found myself doing, at one point I had 8 part-time jobs, and all of them were with kids. So I decided to come back to school and get the teaching degree in biology, as I had originally planned. After reviewing Chapius and Gupta's work, I've noticed some differences and similarities in their philosophies. For starters, I want to point out that Chapius and Gupta both suggest that assessment be ongoing and that it be integrated into learning in order to gauge current levels and adjust teaching. They also really agree on the fact that assessment is for learning. Gupta says assessment as learning. Chapius says assessment for learning. But really what it comes down to is that assessment shouldn't be separate from learning. It should be part of it. And this is really heavily emphasized in Chapius's recommendation that summative assessments can be used formatively when done properly. And this is on page 5 of the first chapter, Assessment in Support of Learning. If you look here, sometimes an assessment intended to be used summatively can and should be used formatively, such as when tests reveal significant problems with learning that we can address through examining the results and designing appropriate next steps. For those of us who have already been in a classroom and have dealt with the excessive PSSA testing and preparation and other various standardized tests that they do these days, this really works for us to take something that ultimately stands alone from all the other learning that we need to do throughout the semester and apply it to what the students should be learning and apply it as a summative assessment for them would just be marvelous. This is something that ultimately they hate to do. None of the teachers like administering it. But once we find a use for it beyond summative assessment, it becomes far more valuable in order to determine a student's current level and what we can do to adjust teaching. Another similarity between Chapius and Gupta, they really recommend changing the structure, the dynamic of the classroom, so that assessment is integrated into whatever activity you're doing. It must be free-flowing. Where they really differ, though, is that Gupta seems to suggest replacing summative assessment entirely with a formative assessment that she calls performance-based assessments. Performance-based assessments contain, as she claims, contain attributes of both labs and tests, but they're completed in less time. And Chapius, on the other hand, doesn't recommend such a thing. The suggestions of Chapius really kind of put the assessment in the context of every classroom setting and any classroom setting. You know, it's to give ideas and suggestions on how to do things is great, as Gupta does. She provides these 6 steps for a really good PBA, which I'm not arguing is its merit, but she seems to suggest that almost any activity or lab could be taught in this manner, and any activity or lab could be assessed in this manner, and that these summative assessments that previously would take up a whole class could be replaced with something like this. I agree with this on some level, in that, you know, it could be used for some activities in some labs, but I don't think that anything can be taught this way and assessed this way, which is why I feel I'm more closely aligned with Chapius. Chapius points out, and this is where I really resonate with Chapius. Chapius points out that, you know, you have to give students enough time for reflection and feedback. If they don't have time to think about what they did, and this comes down to the 7 strategies here, you know, they won't know where they're going. They won't know where they are, and they won't know how they can close the gap. This is where it really comes down to what's really important in assessment. Where am I going? Where am I now? How can I close the gap? If they can't assess that themselves, if it's entirely on us as teachers to do that, that's extra work for us. And, you know, teachers already have a lot of work on their plates, right? So it really resonates with me, Chapius's pedagogy, about making assessment integrated into the learning procedure. Whether I would use Gupta's suggested PBA, that would depend on what I was teaching. Whether I would use Chapius's 7 strategies, you know, I find myself using these on a regular basis. I find myself using specifically strategy 1, 2, for where they're going. Strategy 4, I consistently like to get my students involved in their own assessment and setting goals for their next steps. And strategy 3, right now I'm reviewing papers for my students, and I'm finding that it's very important that I'm not just editing their papers, that I'm providing descriptive feedback so that they know how they can improve their work. And strategies 5 through 7, how can I close the gap? These are really things that a student needs to work on as well, with the help of their teachers, in order to determine what their goals are and how to track their progress towards meeting those goals. So ultimately, the major difference between Chapius and Gupta is Gupta seems to structuralize assessment into those 6 steps that fall into that PBA, whereas Chapius represents it as dynamic and free-flowing. These 7 strategies can be used one at a time or all within one class, or they can be used on any particular assignment. They can be used for homework. They can be used for activities and labs. And it really, really strongly resonates with me. So I feel I'm more aligned with Chapius, but I do see some aspects of Gupta's pedagogy reflective in my practice. So I've included a link to this video, and I hope you all enjoy it. I look forward to watching yours. It's a pleasure meeting all of you, and I look forward to our class and interacting with the rest of you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.